In the quiet town of Sarasota, Florida, an 11-year-old girl named Carlie Brucia vanished into thin air. It was February 1, 2004, a Sunday evening that would forever be etched in the annals of American crime history. Carlie, a vibrant young girl with a bright future, was on her way home from a friend's house when she suddenly disappeared. The peaceful community of Sarasota was thrown into an abyss of shock and despair, their tranquility shattered by the chilling mystery of Carlie's disappearance. Every corner was searched, every stone unturned, as the desperate hunt for Carlie consumed the town and captured the attention of an entire nation. The question on everyone's lips: what happened to Carlie Brucia? Yet as the days turned into a frantic search, the chilling reality began to unfold. The pursuit for answers would lead investigators on a dark journey, peeling back the layers of a twisted crime that was far beyond anyone's worst nightmare. But what happened to Carlie Brucia, and who was responsible for her disappearance? The frantic search for Carlie Brucia began on February 1, 2004. A day that started like any other in Sarasota, Florida, soon turned into a night of anxiety and fear. The local community was gripped with concern as the news of the little girl's disappearance spread like wildfire. From the very beginning, the local police force swung into action, leaving no stone unturned. Their efforts were supplemented by a sea of volunteers. Friends, family, neighbors, and even strangers came together, united by a singular purpose: to bring Carlie home. The streets were flooded with people, searching, calling out her name, hoping against hope that their efforts would bear fruit. Meanwhile, a critical piece of evidence emerged. A surveillance video from a local car wash captured a chilling scene. A young girl, later identified as Carlie, was seen being led away by a man in a mechanic's uniform. The grainy video, broadcast on news channels nationwide, sent a collective shudder down the spine of viewers. The man's face was unclear, but his yellow station wagon stood out starkly against the backdrop of an otherwise ordinary day. As the sun set on the second day, the community held its breath. Candlelight vigils were held, prayers were offered, and the air was thick with the palpable tension of anticipation. Yet despite the tireless efforts, Carlie remained missing. The search continued into the third day, the fourth. The optimism of the first day had started to wane, replaced by a grim determination. The community, the police, the nation, everyone held on to a sliver of hope. But as the days turned into nights and the nights into days, the reality began to set in. The chances of finding Carlie alive were dwindling. 4 days later, the search would come to a heartbreaking end. The discovery of Carlie's body marked the end of the search, but the beginning of a quest for justice. A quest to bring the man responsible for this heinous crime to account, to ensure that Carlie's death was not in vain. On February 5th, the worst fears of a community were realized. A chill swept across Sarasota, Florida, as law enforcement made a heartbreaking discovery: the lifeless body of 11-year-old Carlie Brucia, abandoned in a church parking lot just miles from her home. The joyous laughter and innocence of a child had been replaced by an eerie silence that echoed the unspeakable tragedy that had occurred. The crime scene painted a grim picture, a picture of unimaginable cruelty. Carlie's body lay in a state that no child, no human being should ever be found in. She had been strangled, her life stolen from her in the most brutal way imaginable. Her shirt bore the remnants of a monstrous act, a silent testament to the horrors she had endured. The news of Carlie's discovery sent shockwaves through the community. Parents clung tightly to their children, their hearts heavy with sorrow and their minds plagued by fear. The streets that once echoed with the playful laughter of children were now silent, the air heavy with grief and disbelief. How could something so horrific happen in their peaceful community? The reaction from law enforcement was swift and resolute. The Sarasota County Sheriff's Office, already burdened with the weight of a missing child case, now had a murder to solve. The search for Carlie had ended, but the quest for justice was just beginning. The hunt was now on for her killer, a predator who had stolen the life of an innocent child. As the sun set on that tragic day, the community came together, united by a shared grief and a collective resolve to find justice for Carlie. Candlelight vigils were held, prayers were offered, and a sea of pink ribbons, Carlie's favorite color, adorned the city, a poignant reminder of a life cut short and a community in mourning. The investigation into Carlie's murder was now underway. The tragic discovery had marked the end of a search, but it was the beginning of a journey for justice, a journey that would expose the darkest corners of human nature and test the resilience of a community forever scarred by tragedy. The police had a lead, a man named Joseph P. Smith. Smith, a 37-year-old father of three, was no stranger to the local law enforcement. His criminal history was a litany of offenses: drug possession, aggravated battery, and parole violations. But now he was the prime suspect in a case that shook a community to its core. The evidence against Smith began to mount. A yellow station wagon, eerily similar to the one captured in the car wash surveillance footage where Carlie was last seen, was linked to him. He had borrowed this vehicle from his landlords on the day of Carlie's disappearance, February 1, 2004. As the police delved deeper, they discovered more damning evidence. Traces of Carlie's DNA were found on Smith's clothing, providing a chilling link between the suspect and the victim. But it wasn't just physical evidence that pointed to Smith. His own brother John Smith came forward to police with a chilling admission. He told officers that Joseph had confessed to him about killing a girl. This confession, coupled with the mounting physical evidence, painted a bleak picture of the man who was now the prime suspect in this horrifying case. Despite the compelling evidence, Smith maintained his innocence. He claimed that he had nothing to do with Carlie's abduction or murder. But the police were not convinced. The yellow station wagon, Carlie's DNA on his clothes, the confession to his brother, it was a mesh of incriminating factors that were hard to ignore. While the community was still reeling from the tragic loss, the police were working tirelessly to build a case against Smith. They knew they needed to leave no stone unturned. Every piece of evidence, every lead, and every clue was critical. They were dealing with the murder of an 11-year-old girl, and they were determined to bring her killer to justice. As the investigation progressed, the picture of Joseph Smith became clearer. He was a man with a troubled past, a history of violent tendencies, and now he was the main suspect in a case that had captured the nation's attention. The evidence against him was substantial, and it pointed to a horrifying reality: that Smith could be responsible for ending the life of a young, innocent girl. But the police were cautious. They knew that a case of this magnitude required meticulous attention to detail. They needed to ensure that every piece of evidence was thoroughly examined, every lead was followed up, and every aspect of Smith's past was scrutinized. They were building a case against a man who, if found guilty, could face the death penalty. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. The community held its breath as the police continued their tireless efforts to seek justice for Carlie. And then, on the 23rd of March 2004, less than 2 months after Carlie's tragic death, the police made their move. Smith was soon arrested and charged with Carlie's murder. The news sent shockwaves through the community, but it also brought a grim sense of relief. The prime suspect was in custody. The quest for justice for Carlie had taken a significant step forward. The trial of Joseph P. Smith began, and the evidence against him was damning. As the court proceedings unfolded, the prosecution presented a strong case, meticulously piecing together the grim sequence of events that led to the tragic demise of Carlie Brucia. The key piece of evidence was the chilling surveillance footage from the car wash where Carlie was last seen. The video showed a man, identified as Smith, approaching the young girl. The prosecution argued that the footage clearly depicted the moments leading up to Carlie's abduction. Further bolstering the case against Smith were the forensic findings. Semen stains found on Carlie's shirt were matched to Smith's DNA, leaving little doubt about his involvement in the heinous crime. Additionally, fibers found on Carlie's body were linked to the interior of the yellow station wagon that Smith had borrowed on the day of the abduction. Smith's criminal history also came under scrutiny during the trial. The court learned of his lengthy rap sheet, which included multiple drug-related offenses and a history of violence against women. This painted a picture of a man capable of the monstrous act he was accused of. Witness testimonies played a crucial role in the trial. The landlords from whom Smith had borrowed the yellow station wagon testified, confirming that he had access to the vehicle on the day of Carlie's disappearance. More damning was the testimony of Smith's brother, who claimed that Smith had confessed to him about killing a girl. Throughout the trial, Smith maintained his innocence, but the overwhelming evidence against him proved otherwise. The defense struggled to counter the prosecution's case, unable to provide a solid alibi for Smith or adequately explain away the damning forensic evidence. After weeks of harrowing testimonies and meticulous examination of evidence, the jury was left with little doubt about Smith's guilt. The horror of the crime, coupled with the weight of the evidence, led to a swift verdict. In November of 2005, the jury found Joseph P. Smith guilty of first-degree murder kidnapping, and capital sexual battery. The following year he was sentenced to death, marking the end of a heartbreaking chapter in the tragic story of Carlie Brucia. Smith was sentenced to death for the horrific murder of Carlie Brucia. The trial served as a grim reminder of the senseless violence that ended a young girl's life and forever altered the lives of her loved ones. But it also underscored the relentless pursuit of justice, ensuring that a dangerous predator was removed from society and held accountable for his atrocious actions. The Carlie Brucia case shook the nation and left a lasting impact. This horrifying incident served as a stark reminder of the lurking dangers in our society, leaving an indelible mark on the collective consciousness. The sense of loss, fear, and outrage was deeply felt, not only within the confines of Sarasota, Florida, but across the breadth of the nation. Following the tragedy, a ripple effect was seen. Changes in local and national policies were initiated, with a renewed emphasis on child safety and stringent laws for sex offenders. The case spurred Florida to strengthen its Jessica Lunsford Act, intensifying penalties for those convicted of sex crimes against children. The national conversation around children's safety and the monitoring of sex offenders was reignited, echoing across legislative halls and family dinner tables alike. But amidst the legal and policy implications, the human dimension of the tragedy cannot be forgotten. The community of Sarasota, united in grief, responded with an outpouring of support for the Brucia family. Candlelight vigils were held, and memorials were set up, transforming Carlie's memory into a symbol of unity and resilience. Carlie Brucia's legacy, however, extends beyond the policy changes and community vigils. Her story, as tragic as it is, has become a rallying call for vigilance, a reminder of the importance of community and the strength found in unity. It has taught us that every child's safety is a shared responsibility, and that together, we can make a difference. Despite the horror and the heartbreak, Carlie's story remains a testament to the power of community and justice. It reminds us that while darkness may sometimes prevail, it is the light of humanity, the pursuit of justice, and the strength of community that ultimately shine through. And in keeping her memory alive, we honor not just Carlie, but every child whose innocence has been stolen too soon. The Carlie Brucia murder is a grim reminder of the evil that lurks in our world. This case, with all its chilling aspects, serves as a stark wake-up call to the reality of such heinous crimes. An innocent 11-year-old, Carlie was robbed of her life in the most horrifying manner. Her case sparked outrage and sorrow across the nation, shining a spotlight on the urgent need for child safety and stricter law enforcement. In retracing the key points, we revisit the relentless search that began following Carlie's disappearance, the tragic discovery of her lifeless body, and the subsequent identification of the prime suspect, Joseph P. Smith. A man with a history of criminal activities, Smith was found guilty and sentenced to death, a verdict that brought a semblance of justice, albeit delayed, to this heart-wrenching case. The Carlie Brucia murder holds a significant place in true crime history, not merely for its shocking nature, but for the profound impact it had on society. It triggered a nationwide conversation about child safety and the need for more stringent measures to protect the most vulnerable among us. It also highlighted the importance of community involvement in aiding law enforcement, as illustrated by the massive search effort initiated by the local community following Carlie's abduction. As we conclude this story, let us take a moment to reflect on the lessons it imparts. It is a call to remain vigilant, to look out for one another, and to never underestimate the power of communal effort in the face of adversity. It is also a reminder that justice, though it may sometimes seem elusive, can indeed be achieved. In the memory of Carlie Brucia, let us strive to create a safer world for our children, where such atrocities become a thing of the past. Remember Carlie, and remember that justice, while sometimes slow, does prevail.